Registrar. I'm really happy that you're here today. Just a quick note that we are going to record this session. So should you have any questions that we don't answer here or you forget to ask them, feel free. You can always pop back and view the video again to kind of make sure you're on the right track, and then you have more questions that you can ask us at a later date. So once again, my name is Jen Duggan. I am an academic advisor here in the Office of the Registrar. I'm joined by a couple of my wonderful colleagues who I'm going to let introduce themselves first, and then we're going to jump right into making the grade. So I'm going to pass it first to Lucas to introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucas. I'm currently a second-year student working with the Office of the Registrar as a student support assistant. I'm here just to help facilitate any questions you may have in the chat. And I just want to remind you guys that we'll have a dedicated Q&A session for like any of your individual queries at the very end of our presentation. I'll pass it on to Kerry now to introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kerry Martin. I'm Program Manager and Learning Strategist at the Gillespie Academic Skills Centre. My primary involvement in regards to making the grade is in talking a little bit about some of the strategies that you can use to hopefully help you to get back onto track.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. And now I think we're just going to jump right into the session. So after attending this session, you're going to understand options available to protect your CGPA from low grades. This is really important because it's going to help you either get back on track so that you're perhaps not on academic probation, or you're able to stave off an academic suspension, and just feel better about things. You're going to be able to identify the most important resources at UTM to help you develop your learning skills. Hot tip, Kerry is one of those resources, as is the Robert Gillespie Academic Skills Center. You're going to be able to receive tips to ensure that you maintain academic integrity in all of your academic work. And then, of course, understanding what those major steps are in creating a really smart study plan. We can't really talk about academic standing and making the grade unless you're fully aware of what it means to make those grades and what those grades are actually, how they're actually calculated. So when we're looking at your grades, there are different standings. So if you're a student that's in good academic standing, that means that your cumulative grade point average, that would be all of those courses that you have completed to date, pass or fail, put all together to create an average. That average needs to be at a 1.5 or higher. And if that's where you are with your CGPA, then you are in good academic standing. You will be considered to be on academic probation if at the end of an academic session, your CGPA is below a 1.5. And we can talk a little bit more about what it means to be on academic probation, but essentially just take away the fact that academic probation is a red flag to say, hey, you know what, something along the way has gone sideways, and we need to find a way to create opportunities for you to bring your CGPA up so that you don't have the stress of low grades, you don't have to struggle, you've got lots of great things in place to help you get those good grades as well. And it just makes things a little bit more enjoyable when you're here at the university. And this is a really great presentation for you to be joining because it is one of those opportunities when we raise the red flag to get you back on track. Continued probation is going to happen if your sessional GPA, so that would mean when we say sessional, a semester. So let's say, for example, in the summer, you're taking one semester of courses or even two courses over the course of the summer. And if your CGPA isn't at a 1.7 or higher, that can pose a bit of a problem. So keep in mind that given after the fall and winter term, if you are on academic probation, and you take a summertime course, if you don't reach that 1.7 CGPA or sessional GPA, sorry, that can actually pop you into a suspension. And we can have more detailed conversations about this as well, but I really want you just to grasp what those GPAs mean. An annual GPA is if you're taking fall winter courses, and again, you have to have that 1.7 CGPA or higher in order to kind of stave off that suspension. Academic suspension comes in two forms. Really, you've had opportunities to bring your grades up, and if your grades didn't come up, you can end up on a 1-year academic suspension. I want you to keep in mind that suspensions are not punitive, which means we're not giving you trouble. It just means that we're giving you time and we're giving you an opportunity to sit and reflect on what perhaps went wrong, what help maybe you need, where you would like to go moving forward, and to utilize the resources that we have here at the university to help you get back on track. Your academic standing you have easy access to this. So your academic standing is made up of your grades and your academic record, and you can actually find more information about all of this in the academic calendar. And I do encourage all of you, if you haven't used the academic calendar to date, use it. Go ahead and bookmark that in your laptop, your desktop, stick it in your phone so that you've got easy access to it, because that academic calendar is really a great, easy to read guide. It looks like it's a lot, but it's actually broken down into really, really digestible, usable pieces to help you navigate. And then if you have questions about the academic calendar and the information in it, you can reach out to us in the Office of the Registrar, and we're happy to clarify any of the points that are there. So let's think about it this way. You're in university, things are going swimmingly, they're going really, really well, and then all of a sudden things start to go sideways, and those high grades that you're getting, or the comfort that you had in getting those grades, starts to shift a little bit, and things get a little bit more challenging, and you start to worry, how am I going to either protect my CGPA, or how am I going to right the ship and try and get back on track? These are some of the really great resources that you can use. You've got dropping courses before the drop deadlines. And keep in mind that academic calendar is going to outline important dates like the add and drop dates for any of the courses that you're taking in any of the sessions. You can late withdraw from courses. So if one of those deadlines happens to pass, you will indeed be able to try and advocate for yourself to have a late withdrawal from that course, which really just means that you're not going to get a refund, but you still have an opportunity to withdraw from that class. There is an option for a credit, no credit. This comes in handy in situations where maybe you don't know whether you're going to pass or fail a course. And we'll touch on this a little bit further in the presentation. And then there's also the second attempt for credit policy, which is a really great resource if perhaps you need a higher grade to get into a program and you've already passed a course. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail in a few slides. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about dropping your courses before the deadline. All of us, if we're being honest, if we're sitting in a class and we're either not enjoying the class or we didn't do any coursework, and so we're starting to fall behind, and we know when that feeling comes around, we're like, I don't think I'm going to catch up on this. This is starting to be a bit of a weight around my neck and I need to do something. Dropping a course before the deadline comes in really handy. It means that you're not going to have this course on your academic record. It's actually going to be pulled right off of your record. It's almost as if you didn't start taking the course in the first place. If you drop it in time by like the first drop deadline, you may actually get a full refund for that course. Oftentimes, there's going to be a second deadline where you might be able to get 50% of that course feedback. If you make it most of the way through that course itself and you drop it, but the deadlines have already passed, you can still drop it. You're just not going to get a refund for it. Okay. By dropping your courses in time by this deadline, you may actually reduce your course load to part-time status. So I would suggest for students that are in a situation where perhaps you're here on a student visa or a study visa or a study permit, if you are receiving financial aid, just make sure that you check in with an academic advisor just to make sure that you're on track. Better yet, you can book an appointment with a financial aid advisor and they can make sure that by, if you're getting financial aid, that by dropping those courses, you're not reducing the amount of financial support that you're getting. And if you are an international student, you specifically want to reach out to the International Education Center because they can ensure that by dropping those courses, you're still meeting the requirements of the study permit that you're here with. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to our office and we're happy to redirect you to the people that are probably going to be the most important people to speak to when considering dropping your courses. If you're not receiving OSAP, if you're not receiving student financial aid, if you're not here on a study permit, you can always, again, just come up to the front desk in the Office of the Registrar and say, hey, I want to bounce an idea off you. I'd like to drop a class. What is that going to do for me? And we can always give you that information. There is no credit limit, so you can drop as many courses as you wish for the duration of your studies. Just know that it's a lot of time. So if you're going to drop your courses, the smart thing to do is drop them once you realize that it's not going to work out as well as you intended, or you're not enjoying the course. The longer you let it sit and wait, the more risks you kind of run into. Again, that being with getting fees back or passing those deadlines. So the sooner you can do it, the better. You will be able to find lots of details on dropping your courses just at the link that we have here on the screen. If you have your phone, go ahead and take a screenshot of this if you'd like. And to drop your courses, you can do all of this through Acorn. So you don't actually have to book an academic advising appointment to do this. You can always attend one of our drop-in sessions if you'd like as well, and just say, I want to bounce the idea of dropping a course. What do you think? And we can give you advice, but you're able to manage this all through Acorn, all on your own. Now, the late withdrawal after the drop date. So this, again, is not going to impact your CGPA. Again, it's almost like you didn't take the class at all. Remember, there is a time commitment to it because you have actually gone through a lot of the course. So you're not necessarily going to, well, you're not going to get any refund back for it because you've kind of let those deadlines pass. But at the very least, it's not going to go on your CGPA. So you're protecting your CGPA right there. It isn't necessarily going to reduce the number of credits that you've taken because you've actually gone through the majority of your course anyways. What it does do, though, is it will take the stress of having that additional course off of your shoulders. Once you've done the late withdrawal, you can stop attending classes, you don't have to submit any more coursework, and you do not go and write that final exam. Okay? You can do this for a maximum of 3.0 credits. So a combination of credits, whether it's a full year credit or a half year credit, the maximum is going to be 3.0 credits. Keep in mind, too, that this can sometimes be seen by grad schools as a bit of a red flag. They may be asking, hey, why did you end up late withdrawing from all of these courses? It's going to show on your transcript that there's an LWD standing for late withdrawal. And so grad programs may actually say, something's gone on. I think we need some clarification from the student. If there's an extenuating reason, you can share that with them, but maybe think about the late withdrawals as kind of a last-ditch option. Obviously, trying to drop your classes before you get to the stage is more preferable, and then grad schools have no idea that you've done it. Again, you can actually request a late withdrawal. Just follow the link that we have here. Easy to do. You're able to manage it on your own. And again, if you have any questions, you can most definitely reach out to us in the Office of the Registrar for support. Now, credit, no credit. This is a really unique option, and you can use a credit, no credit for up to 2.0 credits. So again, whether it's a full year or half year credit, it doesn't really matter, but the maximum is 2.0 credits that you can use. It is not going to impact your CGPA. And it's not going to have anything other than a CR/NCR notation on your transcript. When you do a credit, no credit, it's essentially like a pass-fail. So if you pass the course, obviously you're getting a credit for it. That credit is going to count towards the number of credits that you need to complete your degree, but it won't necessarily count towards the credits that you need to complete your program requirements. So you want to put a little bit of thought before you actually submit a credit, no credit. Just think about, what kind of a course is this? If you're not 100% sure, again, you can either reach out to us in the Office of the Registrar, one of our drop-in sessions, or you can even reach out to your program office as well and speak to the advisor there, and they can provide you some clarification. You can also manage this on Acorn, and I will stress, using a credit, no credit is something, again, you want to put some thought into. You don't necessarily want to say in your first or second year, I'm going to credit, no credit a whole bunch of these courses because then I can go back and undo it later on. That's a real challenge. So save it for the situations where you really, really need it. And again, know that this may also be seen as a red flag for graduate schools. So think about it before you do it, but just know that it is an option should you need it. Now, a second attempt for credit, this is a good policy as well. As I mentioned, this is for students that have passed a course. So you have to have passed a course and received at least 50% in that particular course. What the second attempt does is it allows you to retake a past course, and in doing so, stipulate that if the second attempt nets you a higher average or higher CGPA, you want that second attempt and that grade point average to contribute to your overall CGPA. And then the first attempt would count as an extra course. if you don't complete the second attempt at credit tab when you're on the second attempt at credit page, essentially you're just retaking a past course, and then both of those grades and both of those attempts will show up on your transcript. So you have to be careful. If you really want the second attempt to replace the first attempt, you have to complete the second portion of that page. You can actually head to the website that we have here. We do have the link for it. That's the bottom link there. Just make sure you read the information first. And again, all of this information is on the academic calendar, the Office of the Registrar website as well. You can have easy access to this. Read the information first, and just know that it's a really good opportunity, especially if you want to go to grad school and maybe an upper year course didn't pan out for you and you want to get a higher average. You can totally do this. There is a limit to this as well, though. It's 1.0 credits. So again, with all of these, they're not meant to be used willy-nilly and applying them, wherever you see fit. They're really meant as opportunities to help you save that CGPA. Yes, to get you back on track, but also to provide you with alternate opportunities to really strengthen your CGPA. Perhaps, wanting to go to grad school, it might come in very handy for that. Okay, I did mention, international students, part-time and full-time status as well a little bit earlier, but let's go a little bit deeper into this. So students generally here at the university are considered full-time students if they are taking 3 credits or more. If you're taking less than that, you're considered a part-time student. So pay special attention to this. Again, if you are an international student, or if you're a student that is receiving financial aid, and in Ontario, that would be OSAP, other provinces, their financial aid, and international financial aid as well, because there may be stipulations that say that you must be a full-time student to receive a higher amount of funding dollars. You just want to make sure that you're not kind of getting yourself in trouble with that, because we want you to be able to afford to come to school. So we don't want to see any sort of implication unless it's a choice that you make. So this slide specifically is talking to international students, but everybody else should listen to this as well. If you drop before the deadline, it may put you in part-time status, but it may also help you save money because you're getting that refund. A late withdrawal, it's going to keep you at full-time status because you've actually completed the majority of the course. You've been in for the entire semester almost. You've let the deadlines pass. So it's not going to impact your CGPA. It's not going to put you down to part-time status necessarily, but you lose money because you've let those deadlines pass. Credit, no credit keeps you full-time status if you were taking a full amount of courses, because you're not dropping the course, you're actually completing the course, and then the credit, no credit will actually hide the grade that you earned in that class, because we're essentially just saying you got the credit or you did not get the credit. Okay. And it is a way to save money as well, because you're not dropping the class and not getting a refund for it. So these are really, really good opportunities. And again, remember, 3 credits or more, full-time status here at the university, at least from a policy perspective in the Office of the Registrar. And if you're under 3 credits, that may have implications both for OSAP or financial aid and also for your study permit. So you want to reach out to either the IEC or a financial aid advisor to make sure you're on track. I think that's all we need for this slide here. So let's just move on to smart academic planning. When we consider academic planning, just know that you've got your overall degree, and you can see this in your Degree Explorer as well. So you've got your overall degree that says that you must complete 20 credits, and then it gives you a breakdown of where you've got to pull these credits from. Then you have programs, and the programs have very specific requirements. And you will be able to see what these requirements are once you're in your post, because they'll show up in your Degree Explorer. But you'll also be able to see what those requirements are in your academic calendar as well. So you'll be able to choose the program that you're in or you're planning on getting into, and then you'll be able to see exactly what courses are required for you. And then, of course, the courses themselves. These are going to have perhaps some restrictions depending on what program you're in, what program you're planning on getting in, whether or not you meet the prerequisites or if there are anti-requisites. So all of these things, there are going to be policies and rules and restrictions and guidelines that you have to follow. We do really encourage students to be flexible. Adjust your plans as needed. A lot of students, I know for me, when I first started university, there was a career goal, right? I'm going to be this. It doesn't necessarily work out that way. And for a lot of students, when you're in university, you may hit a bit of a hurdle. And that hurdle might be you're really trying to pass a particular course, but it's proving to be really, really difficult. But that course is needed for the program that you want to get into. If you're really struggling with that course, maybe what you have to do is have a backup plan to say, well, I initially thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I'm running into the barriers here with a particular course because it's so difficult. So what else can I do? What else am I interested in? There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a backup plan. And that backup plan could be a second plan, a third plan, a fourth plan. It could entail, speaking to different people on campus, like the Career Center, to try and figure out what you could do with any of the degrees that we have here, and booking regular appointments with your academic advisors, or popping into office hours or FAQ Fridays so that we can discuss your plans with you. Keep in mind, your Degree Explorer is a great way for you to create different plans as well. So if you have a backup plan, you can kind of build everything in Degree Explorer just to see what it would take to complete that degree. And we're happy to provide many more sessions like this where you can learn how to do all of that as well. When you consider your alternative programs, we will have another session, at least one session coming up in the month of February that you'll be able to join. And like this session today, we're going to record it so that you can go back to it on a regular basis. And I do encourage you to do that. It's a nice resource to have because you can kind of follow step by step and make sure that you're doing what needs to be done to make those alternative plans in place. I will say with academic planning as well, we run into this a lot with students who they'll say, oh, you know what, I've got a big challenge right now because I have a conflict between 2 courses or 3 courses. You can't have the conflicts. The reason that you see the big red in your Degree Explorer, or you receive the email from the Office of the Registrar stating that there's that conflict, is because sometimes, and quite likely in your case, it would turn out to be a challenge with your exams. You need to make sure that those conflicts don't exist. Remember, there is no set schedule to complete specific courses. There's an order that you should probably complete your courses in, especially if they're prereqs to additional upper year classes. But there is no hard and fast rule that says you must complete 5 credits per semester for 4 years to graduate with a U of T degree. So if you have a conflict, our recommendation is that you prioritize one of the courses over the other. And then you can take that other course at a different time. Maybe in the summer, if your CGPA is strong enough, maybe take it in the next year. And then once your CGPA is up, you can kind of catch up on other classes if you want by taking summer courses. So this is something that we do encourage you to pay attention to. Also pay attention to whether or not the courses that you're getting into have restrictions, because if you don't meet the requirements such as prerequisites, then the department will probably pull you out of that course. Now, I do know that there are some courses where there might be a conflict between like a conflict on paper, and that would be between a course and the tutorial or a lab, for example. In situations like that, it's always advisable to reach out to your program advisor because they can let you know exactly what that conflict means on paper and how you're able to negotiate it. Always make sure that you are armed with the information that you need to continue moving forward so that you don't have those moments where you're like, oh, I'm frustrated. I have to stop. I have to think about this. I don't have time. We don't want to do that. So make sure that you're armed with the knowledge by reaching out to both program and academic advisors in the Office of the Registrar, and we're going to make sure that you move forward, hopefully with as little trouble as possible. So the resources, and you've heard me mention a few of these already, the resources to help you with your smart academic planning are going to include your Degree Explorer. All of you have a Degree Explorer. You're able to go in. If you're in your program already, it's going to show the overall degree requirements, and then it's going to break down the program or programs that you're pursuing below that. If you click on the drop-down menu, it's going to show you how many credits you need in any particular section And usually it will tell you where you can pull those courses from. If you haven't used your Degree Explorer yet, I definitely encourage you to get familiar with that. Hopefully Lucas can actually put in the link for you a link to the Degree Explorer. There's also a really handy short video on YouTube that was put together, I think, by our colleagues over on the UTSC campus. If you get a chance to watch that as well, it's just a how-to of how to navigate Degree Explorer. Definitely check it out. We also have the CGPA calculator. This is really handy, and it's a good way for you to keep track of what your CGPA is, especially if you're, at that kind of hovering at that 1.5 CGPA or lower, because it's going to allow you to kind of see where you are and what your options are moving forward. And again, this is knowledge. So let's say you're in a situation where at the end of this semester, so in May, you get your transfer back and you're sitting at a 1.4. When you use the CGPA calculator, that's going to give you the tools to really decide whether taking a summer course is a good idea or not. If you're above 1.5, go ahead and do it. But if you're not, maybe just sit it out for the summer and then start back in the fall. And that way you've got a longer period of time to bring your grades up. I always recommend people use the CGPA calculator. The grade calculator is, I would say, one of the most invaluable tools that we have, because you can literally put in all of the components from your syllabus for any of the courses that you're taking. You can include the name of the project that you're doing, or the test or the assignment that you're handing in. You can add the weight. So, what percentage of your overall grade is that particular assignment or exam going to be? And then you can actually input the grade that you received in it. And then you'll be able to estimate, what grade do I need to get a 60% average, for example, or an 80% average, for example. So it's a really cool tool. Definitely add that to your toolbox of things that you can use to stay on track. And if you don't know how to use it, again, pop into one of our drop-in sessions and we'll show you how to use it. It's really easy and it's awesome. The next one is going to be the program selection workshop. We do have another one coming up this month. So sorry, not this month, next month in February, which is a couple days away. I definitely encourage you to use that. All of you, especially if you're first-year students, you would have also been handed the enrollment guide. So, as a first-year student coming in, how are you going to, pick your courses? That goes hand in hand with the program selection workshop as well. So use all the tools that you have available. If you didn't look at the program selection workbook, or at the course selection workbook, go back and find it. It'll be somewhere in your email. Yeah, and you'll be able to access it. If not, we also have a big library of videos that you can follow, and we've touched on all of these topics that we're talking about today. So feel free to browse that as well. The timetable builder is fantastic because it will allow you to filter everything out. So if what you're looking for is a course specifically in the second session of the second semester of the summer session, and it's in biology, and you want to take it here at UTM, you can absolutely do that. It also gives you a lot of insight into what those restrictions might be getting into a particular course. So you can definitely pay attention to that. What I would say is, if you are looking for those summer courses, keep in mind that we don't actually have the summer schedule available just yet. But my understanding is that we will have it available for students to access via the timetable builder in March. So keep your eyes open. If summer school is something that you're considering, you'll be able to access it then. And then once we get closer to the fall session, usually, I believe it's in early July, late June, early July, you'll get the fall winter update in the timetable builder. Okay. And then finally, important dates. I cannot stress this enough. I know people don't like going to a website and being like, oh, I have to search for things. Important dates, find that page on the registrar's website and just pin it to your desktop. Print it off if you need to. Put the deadlines in your calendar so that you get reminders, maybe on your phone, and it pings and says, hey, tomorrow is the last day to drop your courses and get 100% refund. If you take the time to go through and see what those deadlines are going to be, what those important dates are, and then put them in your calendar, you're never going to be second guessing when things are due or when you have to complete things. So this is just giving you a little bit more information of what we've kind of talked about. So again, Timetable Builder, it does it all for you. If you haven't played in the Timetable Builder, I 100% encourage you to do so. It takes a little bit of time to figure it out, but it's actually very intuitive. And just use it as a filter. Play around with it, see what's available, even in your degree. If you take a look at the academic calendar, you see the list of courses that you have to take to complete your class. You can actually go to the Timetable Builder. You can see when it was hosted this past year, and you can actually see a blurb of, what the course was about, how many students were in it, so you get a sense of the general class size, who the professors were. It's pretty handy. So definitely go and play around with that one. Again, the important dates. These are key. If you have your phone with you, if you can actually take a screenshot right now on the computer, do so, because these are the upcoming important dates that we have. February 17th, it's the last date to drop a Y course from your academic record and your GPA. March 10th is the last date to drop your S course. April 4th is the deadline to withdraw. This is your late withdrawal. And this would be for your S semester, so this semester, or year-long courses. And this is at all 3 campuses. April 4th is the deadline to request a credit, no credit on Acorn, again, for second semester or full year courses. Keep in mind with this one as well, if there's no final exam, the request has to be made to cancel before the deadline. By that deadline. And that would be by the last assessment that you have in class. So that would be the last assignment, for example. Maybe there's group work or an essay or something like that. It has to be done by that particular date. And then April 4th, this is the deadline to submit or cancel your second attempt for credit. Again, for clarification's sake, you can either head to the important dates page, where we're going to have lots of links for you. The Office of the Registrar website as well will give you access to all of these things, but you have to pay attention. Make sure you be like me, set up a whole bunch of alarms so that you know what's coming up. Now we're going to talk a little bit about your academic skills and, developing or strengthening your skills. Now, we know in a lot of cases that when things aren't going well, we know it. It shouldn't be a surprise if all of a sudden we get a final grade and we're like, what do you mean I only got a 40 in this? We would know, because we either weren't handing in the work or we didn't understand the content, and we knew we didn't understand the content. Or perhaps we struggled with particular portions of the course and we didn't ask for help. So we have a really good idea. So making sure that we develop those really strong skills it's important, and it makes your time here in university go by a little bit easier. As it says in the second point here, just like a muscle, these skills are strengthened over time. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you're going to be able to do. First and foremost is getting help at UTM. Support. We have all the support available. I was having a discussion recently with my 15-year-old stepson, and he had deadlines in class, and he actually said to us, because he didn't get a great grade at his midterm, he's like, yeah, but I didn't know. Sure you knew. You did know, because it was written on a piece of paper and handed to you by your teacher. But what didn't happen was you didn't say, I don't remember, and he didn't reach out for help. So we've had this conversation with him. Hopefully he's going to pay attention to it, because we want him to be well prepared as well when he comes to university. So I'm going to share some of the same information with him that I share with you today, because we want you all to kind of ace things moving forward. So reaching out for help means asking for help in a wide variety of ways. That could be, for you, setting up an academic advising appointment. You can submit an Ask Registrar ticket to do this. We often offer MS Teams, Zoom, or in person. A lot of students want a phone appointment, but I would say don't bother with the phone appointment, because we oftentimes, if we need to have an in-person appointment with you, we want to share information with you, which means providing you with links. It doesn't make sense if I read off a URL to you. So try and not do the phone appointment if you can help it. And I also say, with academic advising appointments, think of it this way. if you can Google the answer to something, but you want some clarity, or you want somebody to provide you a little bit more information or show you how to use the information on a particular website, then coming to a drop-in session is where you want to get your answer. If, however, your question or your situation is really complex, perhaps it combines different aspects of your experience in university, maybe you're looking for additional referrals, then an appointment is something that you want to look at. When you submit a ticket, we'll actually triage those tickets, and we will try and provide you the best answer in the manner that's going to get you that answer in the fastest and most effective setting. So you may find that we send you a message saying, hey, please come to a drop-in session. This is not us saying we don't want to meet with you. This is us saying we're going to meet with you, but we want to meet with you in a setting that is going to get you the answer faster. And it's still going to be the great answer, the one that you need. So think of it that way. The drop-in sessions, we do have a slide at the end of the page so you can figure out how to access that. But in the meantime, go ahead and take a screenshot of this, because if you do need an appointment, we want you to be able to submit it. Academic advising resources that we have outside of the appointments are going to include the webinars, the drop-in sessions. We have advising resource archives as well. We have a really cool video library that you can go through, anytime you're looking for something, but perhaps we're not open. Maybe it's the family day weekend holiday and you're like, oh, I have a question about getting into a class. I need the answer now. You can actually go to the resource library that we have on the registrar's website, and you'll be able to get the answer to it. Doing a little bit of research on your own is absolutely fine. It doesn't mean that you're not still going to have a question after you've gone through those resources, but what might happen is you might actually have a more refined question, or even more questions that you want to ask. So keep that in mind as well. Again, academic advising resources, FAQ Fridays, these are great. You do have to register for them. They're hosted twice every Friday, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and they are held virtual. So let's say you don't want to come into campus because you don't have any classes on Friday, but you still want to get an answer to something that is pretty Googleable, but you want some clarity. FAQ Fridays are awesome. For everybody else that's not on a Friday and you want to be in person, our academic advising office hours are awesome, and they are offered twice a week. Generally, they're offered on Mondays and on Wednesdays, and they run for about 2 hours each. Don't be hesitant to come in. A lot of students, I think, are afraid that when they come in and speak to an academic advisor that we're going to, judge you for something or be upset with you. That's not the case. Our goal is to arm you with the information you need to succeed. And the questions that you have are probably going to be the same questions that other students have. So definitely come on in. It's a nice way to get your answers to your questions, and also notice that you're not alone. Okay. We also have the Ask a Student resource navigation. So this is where you're going to be able to interact with peer leaders like Lucas, who's in the chat and who's going to provide us with some answers at the end of this session as well. They're fellow students like you, but they happen to work here in the office of the registrar. Use these resources because they're going through the exact same thing. And if they're not going through it now, they likely went through it earlier. And it's just nice to know that, you can drop in, you can meet with other students, you can ask those questions, and you can get it from a fellow student perspective, as opposed to getting it from somebody, who you might think is in a position of power, and you don't really want to get that. You want it more conversational and less policy. Go for it. It's a great resource for you, and I encourage you to use it. You will find the schedule just posted on the website. So again, go ahead, take a screenshot, use your phone and take a picture of it if you'd like, or just head on over to the Office of the Registrar website, and you'll be able to find, links to all of these opportunities listed there. I already mentioned the video library that we had, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention the actual library. So remember, you have support in the libraries. You have librarians that are there to help you. Oftentimes professors will reach out to the library ahead of time to say, I have this particular assignment that's coming up. Can you make sure that the resources are available for my students to go and use? Use them. And then we also have writing support at the Robert Gillespie Academic Skills Center, which I'm not going to go into great detail about because I'm going to pass it over to Carrie very shortly to handle this. We also have the old exam repository. So as you're preparing for your exams, if you just want to see what was historically on exams and kind of use that to help shape the way that you're studying, you can absolutely do that. And again, feel free, you can snap any of the pictures of this. Remember, this is being recorded, so you can always access it a little bit later on if you'd like. And academic integrity is key to your success. So remember, you drive your success in the sense that when things go sideways or when things don't feel quite right or when you don't have the information that you need to actually raise the red flag for us so that we can assist you. If you have issues with your professors or sorry, not with your professors, but issues with the content of a course, you can talk to your instructors, to your TAs, you can talk to your program advisors as well. You want to be able to organize everything so that you can plan ahead and make sure, those alarms go off to remind you of those key tasks that you have to complete. I'm not going to read through this entire list here because I think it's pretty reasonable and I think everybody recognizes, all of these things, but definitely take a snapshot of it and just kind of follow the guidelines that we have here for you. I'm going to end it here because I want to be able to pass it over to Carrie to provide you with more information, but I want to thank you so much for sitting through this portion of the presentation with me. I will be back with Lucas at the end. And so for now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass things over to Carrie.
Thank you, Jennifer. So yeah, I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the academic skill strategies that you can use to really begin to put things in place. Because unlike for a lot of students that we meet with, there can be all kinds of situations that have led to maybe their CGPA being maybe below what they want it to be. But sometimes it can be to do with some of the skills and the strategies that you're adopting from an academic skills perspective. So give me a moment. I'm going to quickly share my screen. So if there are questions as you go through, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll either have a chance to answer them at the end, or if I spot them as I'm going, then I will try and jump into those as well. Okay, so want to focus on 4 key areas, and this is something that we talk about often in the PASS program, which is a program that we run at the Academic Skills Centre, which focuses on helping students who may need to get their GPA up. So there may be students who are trending towards probation, they may be on probation, or they may even be on a 1 or 3 year suspension, and the program is really there to help them to get themselves back on track. I want to focus on 4 key areas of prioritization, creating a study plan, distributed practice, and then optimizing your study times. So prioritization, we can really look at the different commitments that you have as a student, literally in terms of 2 categories. So in terms of your academic activities, but also in terms of your non-academic activities. And when you look at it, it's an immense list. There's so many things that you could be engaging in. Academically, it's going to your lectures, your tutorials, it's meeting with your TAs, meeting with your prof, going to office hours, you're checking all the Quercus updates, going to the library, could be preparing for exams. There's so much that's happening. But for many of us, the reality is that we also have a big list of non-academic activities that we have to still engage in even while we're studying. So that could be maybe you've got a part-time job. Maybe you've got a 2-hour commute to and from campus. You may have extracurricular events. You may be involved in community programs. You could be involved in a sports team. You may have religious and spiritual commitments. There's a lot going on. So the reality is that for most students, they cannot do everything, or at least they cannot do everything well. So what that really comes down to is a choice about what we focus on, and we call that prioritization. And with that, I want to just highlight a book that we often refer to, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. And in that, he introduces this idea of the time matrix. And a time matrix basically divides all of our tasks. So again, thinking about the academic and the non-academic activities, but dividing all of our tasks into one of 4 quadrants. So you might have items which are important and urgent, items which are important but maybe not urgent, items which are not important but they feel urgent, and then finally those items which are neither important nor urgent but they still take up our time. So I'm going to quickly go through some examples of each of these, and maybe you can think about where are you spending your time. So items which are important and urgent tend to be those which are very much of a crisis type nature. Often it's an emergency. It's something that's come up at the last minute that we feel, oh, I've got to get this done. This could be important meetings, it could be medical emergencies. Often in the context of academia, it could be related to an assignment you need to get done, maybe a piece of research you need to complete, maybe it's a test or a quiz that you've got coming up that perhaps you haven't spent enough time focusing on, and that deadline is coming up. This is often what I call the reactive quadrant. So we're constantly reacting to something that's happened. As a result, that tends to be really stressful, tends to create anxiety. We often end up losing sleep, maybe not eating so well. Maybe we, for that period of time, we don't socialize with friends as much. So it's quite an intense quadrant to be living in. Another quadrant, which is still important, but maybe not as urgent as quadrant 1, is quadrant 2, which are the items which are important, but maybe not urgent. So exercise, if you're a person of faith, it could be prayer, relationship building, your goal setting, creating a study plan, which I'll talk about in a minute, career networking. So these are all the things that you could be doing ahead of time that help you in the long run. They're important, but maybe they don't have the same pressing time commitment that quadrant 1 does. Then we have quadrant 3, which are the items which are not important, but they feel urgent. And really, a lot of the time, this centers around our phones. So I often get phone calls. I don't know the number and I answer them because I think I have to answer it. And it's someone calling me about cleaning my air ducts. Or I'll get random emails and notifications from Walmart about, a 2-for-1 offer on juice, things like that. But ultimately, they're not important messages, but they become distractions. A lot of our notifications, social media, we could be working on an assignment, we could be reading through a chapter, and we get a notification, we get a buzz, a bing, a ding, some kind of sound from our phone, and we think, man, I've got to pay attention to this. But in doing that, you're breaking your focus, creates a distraction. And then in many cases, particularly with social media, and we're looking at, all those reels and those shorts, we just get trapped into this loop. And before we know it, we've spent an hour on our phone and we haven't got back to the work that we were doing. And then finally, we have the items which are not important and they're also not really urgent. So often, unless you're a TV critic, TV watching is not going to be that important in the bigger scheme of things. Similar with social media, with video gaming, some of our emails, and also busy work. So the idea of busy work is really this trying to appease our sense of frustration at the fact that we're procrastinating by just doing stuff. So it's cleaning the closet, or it's cleaning the car, or it's reorganizing your shelves. It's doing something to make you feel good about the fact that you're wasting time. Okay. So what's the relationship between these and our academic skills? Well, ultimately, a lot of the time we end up underachieving because we're submitting work and we're studying in quadrant 1. It's last minute, it's cramming. And as a result, we're putting in really bad quality work. Or we may miss a deadline altogether, in which case you're going to be then subject to academic penalties in terms of deduction of 10% a day and things like that. That's all living in quadrant 1, but that can be avoided. And the reason why I like referring to this matrix is because I think it really helps to explain the relationship well, in the sense that the more time you're spending in quadrant two, in your planning, in your organizing, in your discussions, meeting with an academic advisor, the less likely it is that you're going to be living in quadrant one. High quality student work, high quality responses to exam questions tends to happen as a result of really maximizing quadrant two. Now, I know if I were you, I'd be thinking, okay, Kerry, that's great. How on earth do I find more time for goal setting, or more time for study planning, or more time for career networking, or more time to meet with an advisor? The reality is that you can find time. And the reason why I say that is because I strongly believe that you can find time by reducing how much time you spend in quadrants three and four. So, shutting off your phone when you're studying, putting your phone on do not disturb, organizing your inboxes so you're only getting emails that are really important. In terms of quadrant four, it's not to say that you shouldn't watch TV while you're in your university courses, or that you shouldn't be video gaming or engaging in social media. It's absolutely fine to do those things, but maybe organizing when, and really focusing on, is it really important for me to be doing this while I'm meant to be in the library finishing this report? So just to kind of summarize this matrix, often bad things happen academically when we're constantly studying from a quadrant one perspective, last minute cramming, getting it in just before the deadline. We can eliminate that by spending more time in quadrant two, by pre-planning, by organizing, meeting with advisors, attending office hours. But we do that by reducing how much time we spend in quadrants three and four. Related to quadrant two is this idea of distributed practice. And this term comes from a piece of research from 2013, where John Dunlosky and colleagues looked at a number of different learning strategies and approaches, and they identified two approaches that were more successful than others in turning around students' academic grades. The first was practice testing. So this is the idea of looking at past paper questions, practicing past paper questions, getting feedback on them, reanalyzing them and trying them again. But basically practicing taking tests, practicing taking quiz questions. The second is this idea of distributed practice. And in summary, distributed practice, which is opposite to massed practice, is about spreading your studies out over a long period of time, rather than this crammed last minute focus that we often have. So massed practice is basically cramming. It's basically you staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning to finish a paper, or just getting up first thing in the morning and studying for 24 hours to get ready for tomorrow's quiz. That's mass practice. We're basically condensing all of our learning into a short period of time. The problem with it is that it really limits your opportunity to reinforce your own learning. We'll talk a bit about that when we look at the forgetting curve in a few minutes. But the idea is that you learn effectively when you're able to learn something once and review it, test yourself on it, go back over it. But if you're doing things at the last minute, and that includes writing a paper, you don't have the chance to review. You don't have the chance to make edits and changes. This mass practice, this cramming, also leads to a lack of sleep, impact our social interactions, and just generally taking care of ourselves. It can also lead to procrastination, which I'm sure we all know about. Distributed practice, on the other hand, is really more in the form of learning something over a longer period of time and constantly reviewing what we previously learned. So in this case, the idea is that if you're able to review and reinforce what you've learned, you're more likely to understand it in a deeper way. And that means that when you come to the exam, what you're doing is, rather than simply learning information again, what you're actually doing is fine-tuning what you already know, which means that you're probably going to be less overwhelmed because you've already got that banked knowledge. A way of demonstrating this, and I'm sure many of you have taken Psych 100 and have learned all about memory, is this idea of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And what this basically does is a really great demonstration of how this idea of distributed practice actually works in reality. So we're going to wrap up here in this making the grade discussion, this workshop at 4 o'clock. If I were to come to you at 4 o'clock and say, okay, Dominic, Teresa, Kevin, tell me what did you learn from this workshop? Your recall would be roughly around about 75%. So roughly about a quarter of what we've talked about since 2:30 until 4 o'clock will be forgotten. And that will continue to decline over time. So if I asked you 10 minutes after the session's done, you'll remember about 40%. If I came to you tomorrow around 4 o'clock and said, okay, what did you learn in the Making the Grade workshop? You will remember about 20% after a week, 10% after a month, 5%, and so on. The reality is that this green line that we're looking at reflects what many of us as students do. We attend the second week of class and we don't look at those notes again until just before the exam period. But what happens is that because that was 10 weeks ago, you're starting off from a 5% recall level. Whereas in reality, if you were to take what we've learned today, and let's say at 4:10, you decide that you want to just go back over some of the things that we talked about. Let's say this was a lecture and you had the slides. For you just to go back and review the slides from your lecture after 10 minutes, your recall can actually go back up to 95%. And then look what happens. There's still a decline after that, but it's not as dramatic. If you were then to review what you learned the next day, 24 hours, again, your recall goes back up to 95%. And again, there's a drop off, but it's less. So with each review of information, the level of forgetting is becoming less and less to the point where you're able to stabilize at around about 75% recall. So how do we review? So what you could be doing in terms of review, it could be just consolidating your notes. It could be going back over your notes, filling in gaps, clarifying information. But it's also important that you try and do this as quickly as possible after the lecture. But a lot of students, what they do is they'll attend the lecture, they'll make their notes, they will file them away somewhere or bury them if they did it by paper at the bottom of their bag and not look at it. And what ends up happening is exactly what I just talked about, which is this idea of massed practice. You've now got 12 weeks of classes, which you haven't reviewed. So now you've got to review 12 weeks of classes 2 days before the exam, starting off at 5% recall level. And then on top of that, that's just for one class. If you had a full course load of 5 classes, that's 60 classes worth of content before the exam period starts. Whereas the research shows breaking that review period down week by week is a far more effective method of preparing for exams and assignments. I know I mentioned earlier on about procrastination, and procrastination ultimately is a habit. It's something that we're doing continually over a period of time, but the research, as you can see there, clearly demonstrates that procrastination definitely impacts exam performance, definitely impacts your participation marks, and it absolutely leads to a lot of errors and issues with the assignments that you submit, particularly if you're that type of just-in-time learner. So a way around procrastination is really to focus on a study plan. And a study plan is really a quadrant 2 activity. Remember I talked about quadrant 2 being proactive. You're trying to work ahead of time. You're thinking about your exams which are coming up in April, and you're thinking about it from January. How do I prepare for that? So a study plan is not just an agenda. It's not just a list of dates of when things are due. It's a plan that reflects all the different aspects of what goes into you achieving your best academically. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this, but before I do, I'll just mention that what should be informing your study plan is your reading of the syllabus, because your syllabus has lots of clues as to how to study effectively for that particular course. It could be the style of assessment in the course. So is it going to be exam questions, which are multiple choice? Is it going to be essay style exam questions? Is it presentations, things like that? You should also be aware of what your learning preferences are. So are you someone that learns best in silence? Are you someone who learns best by doing mind maps? Are you someone who learns best by speaking about what you've learned, maybe as part of a study group? Think about your time commitments and also your personal well-being. So I'll show you a few quick examples. This is just a really fun example, but what I like about this is that it's an integration of, some fun activities. So, it's celebrating a birthday, it's playing a netball match, it's doing a number of different things, but there's also very clear reference to what are they working on. So this day, on the 17th, I'm focusing on developing my flashcards. This week, I'm focusing on my trigonometry page 110 to 25. And they really integrate a lot of different ideas. Again, it's a pretty fun example. Typically, what you would see at the university level is one of two types. So typically, we talk about using a semester plan. So the idea of a semester plan is that you have your courses along the top, and then you have the weeks along the side. And then each week, you're basically mapping out what are the major things that's happening in each of my courses. The benefit of taking this approach, and I'll just note that in this particular example, the big assignments, the quizzes, the tests are in these big blocked colors, as you'll see there. The white boxes are more the study habits, the strategies you're using. But the benefit of something like this is that you can look ahead, and rather than looking at each course individually, you can look ahead and say, okay, week 8, the week of February 27th, man, I've got a 15% quiz, I've got an assignment draft, I've got another quiz, and I've got an experiment due, all in that same week. Or if I look at week 5, again, I've got a quiz, I've got the outline, I've got the test, I've got an experiment due. I can see that week 5 and week 8 are really intensive weeks. I don't want to get to the Sunday before week 8 without knowing what's going to be happening. Because if I, on a Sunday evening or on a Monday morning of week 8, turn around and think, okay, let's see what's happening this week. And I realize I've got all these things going on, I'm going to be in that maths practice. I'm going to be cramming. Whereas what should be happening is you look ahead at week 8 and you think, okay, I've got to get ready for that. That's a really hard week. But week 6, I've actually got no assignments. I've actually got no quizzes. I've actually got no tests. So this is a week where maybe I can get ahead and really start preparing for this assignment. I can maybe start thinking about this experiment. Equally, I've got reading week. I can use that time as well. So it's really the ability to look ahead, again, quadrant 1, to be able to prepare and make sure that you're balancing out how you're putting your studies together. Another version of a study plan would be what we call a weekly plan. So this is maybe more what you would have seen in high school, but really it's just about using these time blocks to really block when you've got classes, when do you have tutorials, but also, again, looking at these white spots, what can I be doing between my classes? So it could be that I've got a biology lecture at 10, and then I've got the biology practical around 3. Between 11 and 3, I've got nothing going on. It probably isn't the wisest choice to spend that time at square one, but maybe to break it up and say, okay, I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to focus on reviewing my notes. Okay. So looking at how you're spending each day, but also looking at how do you build in your personal life? What's going on at home? Maybe religious activities. It could be time spent with friends. All of this, including your commute time, should be factored into your study plan. So you can really maximize every minute that you have. Just going quickly, just having a look at just preparing for your lectures. So students often talk about the fact that they often get lost in lectures, the professor speaks too quickly, things like that. Just some quick tips just to really prepare you. So complete the readings before class, reviewing your previous class, looking at previous lectures. Often one lecture will build on the other. Also look back at your syllabus, making sure you're arriving on time to your lectures. There's nothing worse than arriving to your lecture late, flustered, stressed, trying to find a seat. You're not paying attention to what the professor is saying. You may have missed some key instructions. And obviously that creates a level of stress that can actually affect your learning as well. And finally, I just want to focus on just how you maximize your study time. So thinking about what you're doing when you're studying. So a lot of the time we think that multitasking makes sense. If I multitask, I can get more done in less time. The research actually says it's totally the opposite. we tend to get more done when we focus on one thing at a time. So, for example, a piece of research in 2010 talked about the fact that if you are reading, say you're reading a chapter from a textbook, and in the middle of reading, you're responding to text messages, it can take you anywhere from 22 to 59% longer to read that same chapter. And that's not including the actual time that you're actually spending texting. So just the idea of this is that even just by responding to a text message while you're reading, is breaking your concentration, it's breaking your flow. And as a result, you often have to end up going back and rereading the same paragraph and rereading it again and again because you've lost the flow. So one first thing to really focus on is single tasking. If you're studying, don't watch a movie. If you're preparing for an exam, maybe do it in a space where you're not having to have conversations with family members or friends who are buying stuff online. Focus in a way in which, if you're going to be focused on studying, you're focusing only on that. Linked to that is this idea of optimizing your productivity time. So it's about knowing, when am I most productive? Me, I know that I'm really productive first thing in the morning. I don't know why, but I just have a greater level of focus early in the morning. So what I will do is I will focus on my most intensive and my most difficult tasks in the morning. Reason being is that because I know my focus is there, I can probably get through those tasks quicker. Whereas in the evening, I am really tired and my brain doesn't work the same way. So, for example, if I were reading a chapter from a textbook first thing in the morning, I may read that chapter in 30 minutes. Because I'm not so productive in the evening, because my attention span and my focus starts to decrease as the day goes on, if I read that same chapter, it would maybe not take me 30 minutes, maybe it now takes me an hour because I keep losing focus. I've got to reread. Did that make sense? I don't understand that. So work out, and I'm not saying it has to be in the morning, your productivity times could be in the evening, but work out, when are you most productive? And in those time slots when you're most productive, dedicate that time to really focusing on your most important and sometimes your most challenging work. Also think about where you're studying. Obviously, we know that we have a big campus and we have lots of students on campus, but there are often study spaces that you can find. You may have to be a bit creative. If you really have a good roam around, you can find some quiet corridors and quiet spaces where there are tables and things like that you can use. But equally, think about where you're studying at home. So many of us will study in our bedrooms, which is fine if you have a desk. If you're studying on your bed, from my experience, I find that students often don't get as much work done simply because your bed is ergonomically designed for rest, for relaxation, and obviously sleep. So often that doesn't mesh well with our need to be productive. So if you are studying in your bedroom, try not to study on your bed, but study in a space or a location that feels like you're really academically focused. Also think about who you're connecting with. This is really all about, working in study groups. We have FSGs across campus. So if you go to the Academic Skills Center website, you can look at FSGs and you'll see facilitated study groups where many of your courses will have study groups where students will be getting together, working on activities, working on ideas that relate to some aspects of your course. And we have found consistently, and there is a ton of research that demonstrates that being able to study together actually enhances and actually improves academic outcomes. At the Academic Skills Center, we have a variety of supports that are available. So if you need help with writing essays and assignments, getting ready for tests and exams, help with math, time management, problem solving, note taking, you can certainly come to the Academic Skills Center. And we definitely have both appointments that you can make through WC online. And we also have drop-ins. So we have a number of opportunities for you to come and get support in terms of your writing and your math. And certainly it's just an opportunity for you to also gain some new resources and materials. I mentioned earlier about facilitated study groups, but that doesn't mean that you can't form your own study groups, but we just have these available where we train our facilitators to lead these groups so you're in a position where you can really get a deeper understanding of your course content. So, as Jennifer said earlier on, I am happy to answer any questions you may have for either of us. So feel free to either